Hello everyone, I'm Tom64.
And I'm THD.
And welcome, dear viewer, to the Halloween-ish playthrough that some of you, nay, none of you, have been waiting for. This is Super Castlevania IV. Now, you know, we've covered Castlevanias 1 and 3 on the NES. We did those last year, 2015 at the time of this recording. And I promised this one would happen this year, but I never said when it would happen. And, you know, the year was getting on. It was July. I was like, should we do this now? Nah, we got other games to cover. September? Nah, that's kind of a boring month. Skipped over August for some reason. I don't know, maybe King Crimson's in effect here. But, you know, October. October seemed like the perfect time. Because, look at this shit right here. It opens with a friggin' tombstone being split in half by lightning. Wait for it. Come on, you're showing me up here. There we go.
You're starting to... Okay, I'm fixing to say, Tom, because you're starting to disappoint me a little.
Oh, that's a general thing that happens when people really get to know me. But Super C4 is essentially like a remake of the original Castlevania, and it also includes elements of Vampire Killer as well. And if you don't know what Vampire Killer is, it's technically the second game in the Castlevania series, and it's also the only one released for the MSX2 home computer. I'm not exactly sure whether or not it was released in arcades. Helldragon says it was, but who knows what he really knows these days. It also apparently came out on the Famicom Disk System roughly 1 month after Castlevania, so there you go. But the thing about Vampire Killer is the key gameplay differences. It emphasised exploration and puzzle elements rather than straightforward action, and obviously all this information comes straight from the Castlevania Wikia. What, do you think I've just turned smart all of a sudden, you silly kings?
Well, I know that's my problem. It is kind of interesting that now, with Castlevania being more known for its exploration elements, doing the whole, giant single-level thing,
yeah,
a la Metroid, it's kind of interesting to see it's had a callback to that. But I have to say, even though most of my Castlevania experience relates to those, Castletroid, Metroidvania kind of games...
Yeah.
I haven't really done a lot of time with the classic Castlevanias, but Super Castlevania IV is the classic Castlevania I played the most of. I really like this game. I ain't good at it. I had to save scum my way through it, and I don't even think I beat it. But it's just fantastic all around. The graphics are great. The music is... just listen to this shit that's building up in the background. The controls are solid. Despite what other people may talk about and complain about this game on the internet, I think this game is probably one of the premier top 5 Castlevania titles, hands down.
Let me just ask, are you referring to Ego Raptor when you say people complain about the game?
Yeah, I suppose we might as well get that out of the way.
Well, that's a weird thing, he bitches about Ocarina of Time a lot, but when he discussed Super Castlevania IV in his mini-sequelitis, because he did one for Castlevanias 1 and 2, comparing the two, which was great, and honestly I think it's his best one, but the Super C4 one, not to be confused with Contra, is basically talking about how Super Castlevania is a fantastic game, but it brought forward traditions from 1, 2, and 3 that weren't really needed, in his opinion. Like the sub-weapons, for example, because Super Castlevania IV really improved upon the whip's controls. Instead of just being able to whip forward and whatnot, now you can do it in all 8 directions, and if you hold the B button, you can even wiggle it about like it's a spiked meatball on the end of a piece of metal spaghetti, or something like that. It's going to be your premier weapon, so why would you really need the sub-weapons, was his opinion. So he doesn't really hate it. That's my little... I can't believe I'm actually defending Ego Raptor here, from you of all people.
Well, to be fair, I do remember that he did say that the game is really good, but it kind of invalidates some of the sub-weapons, and I get that. I feel that the best solution would have been to just kind of change some of the sub-weapons, because, if you made it in a way where the sub-weapons mostly dealt with range and more power, things like that, I felt that would have balanced out the whip a lot more. But the whip feels so fucking good in this game, and it really is a shame when you play this game, and then you go back to, I believe the game that came after this, I don't know how specific it is, it's a Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which was, I believe it was on the MSX, and then it was ported over to the Super Nintendo. That game just feels stiff as fuck in comparison, and nowhere near as satisfying as this game is, in my opinion.
Well, I can see the benefits of, having such restrictive controls in, Castlevanias 1 through 3, and that sounds like a weird thing to say, oh, it's restrictive, that means it should be less fun. But the whole game's, built around that. So when you get to this, it's like, wow, I feel so free. And again, I'll call back to Ego Raptor, like from the Game Grumps unfinished playthrough of Super C4, which is kind of disappointing because the Castlevania 1 playthrough of theirs is one of my favourites. It just feels a lot more arcadey, which I feel a lot of people would prefer to like the original Castlevanias, because like Castlevanias 1 through 3 were very unforgiving, 2 less so, but 1 will destroy you and 3 will just bend you over and have its way with you, really.
Yeah, man, I still remember like you playing through some of that and some of the like bullshit challenges you had to endure, and well, I mean, I have sympathy for you, I really do. But I mean, it's like I'm not making a joke, seriously.
Okay.
But it's like, again, I get that, and but I still feel, and I guess it's just my opinion about games as a whole. I really feel like you shouldn't limit the player in terms of like your control scheme. Like when you get to this game, you know, really the only stiff thing that happens as a result, you know, when you play this game is like his walk cycle. It's even a little faster than it used to be, and like the fact that his jumps are super tight. Like that's where I had to like save scum the most, because you have to be sometimes on like the absolute corner of like a platform in order to jump to it. I'll point out in particular a part where I had to do that later on, but it's like I feel that games shouldn't restrict the player in terms of their control and their mobility, and instead they should present challenges that have to, where the player has to master that. That's why I feel like, for example, Shovel Knight is really fair and balanced, because the player isn't restricted in terms of their mobility, but all the challenges as a result are just, you know, a result of you having to have the skill in order to use that mobility correctly, and I think Super Castlevania IV was a good step in that direction.
It's funny you talk about mobility, because like in the original Castlevanias, when you jumped, you were basically like locked into your momentum. Here, you can kind of adjust yourself slightly in midair, so that's just like another way that the game kind of makes things, I don't want to say more casual, but more accessible, maybe? Again, more arcadey. And it just feels really fluid and whatnot. But I just want to give a quick shout out to the person whose FAQ I used to help record this whole thing. And that person's name on Game FAQs, if I can like scroll up here, is BK Stunt. And it's really good FAQ. It's got names for each levels. It's even got like names of like the music that's used in each particular level. Like we're in stage 1 now, which is called Entrance, I believe. The music playing right in the beginning before we got into like the castle area as prologue. Now, of course, it's Simon Belmont's theme, which is glorious. Also apparently known as Dance of the Holy Man, which is pretty rad.
Ah, man, you know, I might as well just bring this up now a bit early, although this boss is kind of crazy and weird, and it's a really kind of exemplifies how useful the whip can be in this game. You can just kind of hang back and not really have to get in too close to deal with him. You know, just hearing that theme really did make me pine for having Simon Belmont in Smash Brothers. Alright, might as well get that out of my system.
Well, I don't blame you. He's an iconic character, he's got a great moveset, but you know, Konami will Konami.
I really do believe, I seriously believe that Nintendo approached him and tried. I really do believe that, because you know Sakurai would have done that, considering the huge demand they had for the guy. I mean, hell, Little Mac got in, and Little Mac is not even that popular in Japan, let's be honest.
Is he?
So, no, he's not, actually. It's kind of like the Metroid effect, where Metroid actually does kind of middling over in Japan. But in America, the reason it kept having games was because Metroid is actually really way more popular in America.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So there's that effect, and I really do think Sakurai tried to get Simon. It just didn't work out. Oh well, I've moved on and gone on with my life. It's fine. I'm not gonna discuss it any further.
Okay, you can stop now. Stage 2, Forest. Music playing? Forest of the Monsters, otherwise known as Forest of Evil Spirits. Few things you want to look out for here. Hands coming from the ground. I believe they can't hurt you, but they will basically like set you up to be like hit by other enemies. And you know how I really hate like touch damage, it just grinds my gears, so to speak, but I guess some tropes die more easily than others. I don't know what these things are meant to be called. They resemble kind of like demon armadillos, so let's just call them that for now.
The fun thing of kind of revisiting these older games is that I like to look out for enemies that they recycle later on in other Castlevania games. This is especially true with Symphony of the Night, where a lot of its monsters and sprites are actually reused in other games like Aria of Sorrow, Harmony of Dissonance, things like that. Some of the bosses we'll actually be facing later on are bosses you can fight in a Symphony of the Night. I don't know their names off the top of my head, but I can actually say, hey, you remember that guy? He's a thing.
I don't know what like the things coming out of the grass are meant to be. They seem like ghosts that are like invisible, obviously, but they wrap themselves in leaves, which is pretty interesting.
You know, now that I think about it, what makes the horror trope so popular for platforms back in the day? Because already off the top of my head, I can think of other various platformers that have to do with, you know, fighting horror monsters, and you're going on with, like, a weapon and stuff. You got stuff like Monster Bash for, like, DOS, you know, an Apogee game. You have stuff like Ghouls and Ghosts, Splatterhouse is the... Yeah, Splatterhouse is the one that comes to mind for me. And what was that one other one that I was thinking of? Fuck. It was another horror-themed... game. Damn it, I don't want to think of Decap Attack, because that's not the one I was trying to think of.
Oh, when I think of Decap Attack, I just think of the Sonic the Comic strip, which was honestly pretty funny.
Well, I mean, they kind of had to invent a little for Decap Attack, but I heard about that kind of stuff they were doing for that. But I'm trying to also, were there any other horror-based platformers that I didn't list that you are also familiar with? Maybe you played as a kid?
Not really. I tended to go for more like the colourful platformers and the like, so, you know, Altered Beast, maybe?
I wouldn't really call Altered Beast a horror platformer, although it is kind of horrifying when you hear some of that voice dialogue.
Oh, jeez. Rise from your grave, Mega Man.
I just remember, like, having such a hard time with, like, Splatterhouse. I didn't play, like, the original Splatterhouses. I played Splatterhouse 3, and that game is fucked up.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you're in a house. It's a splatter house.
Of course.
And you have like a hockey mask that gives you superpowers when you wear it. It's like evil possessed, things like that. There's a Medusa, another classic you know, Castlevania boss that you fight every so often in like a few games here and there, and you actually wasted her pretty quick.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be making great use of the cross throughout the playthrough. Sorry if you're like, you're the type of person who gets tired of seeing the same strategy over and over, but I'm a very safe kind of player. I go with what works. Don't worry about me getting the axe, the cross will make its comeback pretty soon. And here's like a clear example of how Super Castlevania IV is a little bit easier, at least in the starting stages, than other Castlevania games. Just the ability to whip diagonally here is a game changer, I believe, because there were so many stages like set on the stairs and whatnot, particularly in Castlevania 3, which I believe Medusa was like a sub-boss or a boss in, funnily enough, that it was just so annoying. I just remember getting twatted on the stairs one too many times for my liking.
Yeah, I believe, going back to that sequelitis episode, I believe the point Eoraptor brought up was that the sub-weapons were placed in such a way where good use of them would be helpful in dealing with the particular challenge that was coming up next, and having the whip being able to hit everywhere kind of mitigates that. And I actually understand that. Personally, what I like to do in any sort of Castlevania game, I like to get the straight cross weapon. I love the cross. I hate using the axe. I suck at throwing weapons. The knife isn't really that great. Holy water, same thing. But, I mean, like, I understand their use, being placed in particular, you know, spots to deal with enemies overhead and things like that. But that's just not my bag. Usually I kind of stick with the one entire true strategy, you know?
What do you think about this little map screen here? It doesn't really, like... There's no branching paths, let's put it that way. It's not like in Castlevania 3. It's just a nice little aesthetic touch, really.
Oh no, it's kind of a nice little sort of loading screen sort of thing to kind of get you all hyped up for the next area, kind of build the atmosphere. Because I think another great thing that Super Castlevania IV does is that it helps really kind of build atmosphere in a lot of ways,
yes.
in terms of the map, in terms of music, things like that. And any good game worth their salt can really kind of build that kind of atmosphere. I in particular am loving like hearing this kind of music. Like I remember some of the cave areas in like Harmony of Dissonance. I believe it's Harmony of Dissonance, where they would play this kind of music, you know, and have caves similar to this. Like Harmony of Dissonance was such a weird game because it was like, I think it was before Aria Sora, but it was after Circle of the Moon. Circle of the Moon I didn't really like that much because the knockback was crap. Everything was kind of muddy looking. I don't know, not really my favorite Castlevania. But Harmony of Dissonance had this really weird, lots of dark purples and like blues kind of color palette. And like all the monsters just looked really kind of funky in that game. I don't know. I liked it. I don't like it as much as Aria of Asara, which is one of my favorite games, like, ever, and one of my favorite Castlevania games, like, period. So, I don't know, that's just my feeling about it. They actually released Harmony of Dissonance and Aria of Asara in, like, a 2-pack for the Game Boy Advance, which I really need to buy one of these days.
I'm not sure if we'll, like, be getting into the Metroidvanias anytime soon, honestly. I think I actually prefer this type of Castlevania, where it's a set stage, you go from A to B, maybe there's a branching path here and there, but I feel like this allows for more focused level design and enemy placement.
Well, that's true. I mean, there's certainly a good case to make
For both types,
both.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel if we were to do a playthrough of, like, the Metroidvania kind of thing, I feel you would have to kind of cut around the backtracking a little bit, because the backtracking, it does make a huge part of the Metroidvanias, and I like that gameplay style personally, but I understand it would not really be kind of the best thing to talk over, because you have to come up with stuff for it.
Although I think, like, the two best friends, Matt and Liam in particular, did a fucking great Let's Play of, I want to say Aria of Sorrow. It was one of the GBA Metroidvanias. It was the one where you fight, oh god, what's that Belmont's name? He looks like Joseph Joestar.
That's Arya, sorry, yeah. You fought Julius Belmont, who, by the way, is my favorite fucking boss in Castlevania. That fight is just, perfect, 100%.
I agree, mate. It was pretty rad to watch. Anywho, we're in the caverns now. Technically, the music that was playing in the proper caves bit was, well, funnily enough, Limestone Caverns. Music that is playing now is, funnily enough, The Waterfalls. And nothing too much to deal with here. You'll notice those little rings dotted throughout. They're one of the main new things in Super Castlevania IV. They're mainly here for you to take advantage of using your whip, and you can swing about, and it's all very fun and arcadey, and I have a blast with it. End of statement.
Man, I really wish they kind of did that more often in terms of letting you use your whip to swing on things. I again, with like Rondo of Blood, they just kind of reversed back to like, more NES style Castlevania, but I really feel with the SNES and, any other increased graphical advantage, you would have been able to take advantage of doing a lot more cool stuff. Maybe swinging around on the whip to find secret areas and things like that.
Man, this area fucking kicked my ass until I finally learned, hey, dumbass, maybe don't run ahead so much and get your ass knocked back into a bottomless pit by a falling block.
Yeah, this game still has recoil when you get hit, and as always, it will teach you the art of patience, when you're going through these particular levels, something which I don't have, clearly.
These things back from the original Castlevania, although now that you can whip in 8 directions, and you can make your whip go all wiggly and whatnot, they're a lot easier to deal with. The music for this section of level 3 is the Submerged City. Don't fall in the water, you will pretty much die.
I actually recall that the first technically first Castlevania game I ever played was not actually a Castlevania game. It was Kid Dracula for Game Boy.
Yeah.
And I've actually, I don't know if that playthrough's still up actually, but I did do a Let's Play of that like years ago with my absolutely, okay, well the commentary's still a little subpar, let's be honest, but at the same time I still didn't know what I was doing.
Honestly, it was the volume of the whole thing that was the most iconic thing for me. I'm not the best at balancing, but you like to turn the game audio up really high, which in turn means you have to put your mic up really high, and you're a pretty loud guy at the best of times, so...
Well, that's true. But still, I mean, that's kind of how I sort of got into Castlevania. Beyond that, my first real exposure to Castlevania was, again, I believe, Circle the Moon. I didn't even play that. I saw somebody play it on their Game Boy Advance back when I didn't have a paycheck, and I was jealous of anybody who had anything that looked fun.
Damn them!
I mean, that was pretty much how it is when I was a kid. Like, I saw something cool. Oh, well, you can't have it until you're an adult and you have a job now, so fuck you. That's why I don't really have nostalgia for shit like Final Fantasy and, like, all the other stuff you guys kind of nostalgia over, I'll be honest, because I did not have a lot of that growing up, and I'm not going to get into this topic that much, but that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, this is too scary for Halloween. It's getting too real now.
But man, and I think, I still did not play Circle of the Moon for, like, years. I actually played Aria of Sorrow after that. Like, I saw Circle of the Moon, then I played Aria of Sorrow. I found the best Castlevania game, hands down, and then I went back and I played Harmony of Dissonance, and then I tried Circle of the Moon. I'm like, I don't really like this one that much. I got spoiled by Aria, I'm sorry. It's just too good.
Well, it's like playing Paper Mario Sticker Star and then going back and playing the N64 original. You'll just be a little bit sad that you didn't start with the N64 Classic. Anywho, boss time, and we are fighting Orphic Vipers. They seem more like dragons than anything, but this kind of calls back to, you remember that boss in Castlevania 3, if you took a particular route? That also kind of took place in like a submerged city, but that one was much harder, because instead of coming out of like one side of the screen, they both popped up on separate sides from time to time, and it was very easy to get knocked back into the water and die.
Yeah, I remember. Here you can take them a bit more cautiously, use your cross, use the whip, obviously, just kind of play a bit more safe, and they're really not that bad.
Pretty easy pickings, really. Ah, the victory theme, one of gaming's best.
That's true.
Okie doke, guys, that'll do it for the first installment of the Super Castlevania IV playthrough. We'll see you next time when we move on to Stage 4. Bye for now.